afternoon, everyone. Yang Berhormat, my good friend Dato Sri Sabrichik, Minister of Communications and Multimedia. Yang berbahagia Dato Sri Dr. Sarifah, Secretary General of KKM. Yang bahagia Dato Haji Abu Bakar, Director General Broadcasting RTM. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really happy to be here at such a wonderful opportunity to share what we're doing. Dato Sri Sabrichik and I had a conversation about how best to communicate the message. We have been on the transformation journey now for, I think, 5 years and 9 months since Dato Sri Najib took over and he began to launch the program. We thought maybe the way to do it today is to imagine we step into the shoes of the critical people who are very critical of what we're doing, and then ask the question, the tough question from their standpoint. What are their criticism of what we're doing? And then we deal with the question, how do we respond to them? Let me first talk about the theory dulu. The theory for transformation is about change from a current reality to a new reality. So when you want to move from a current reality to a new reality, you don't want to change something that you like. You only want to change to something that you prefer it to be. So it means you're going to shift from there to there. But when you do that, a change process will encounter resistance. There are people that are going to resist it. So in the theory, in stage 1 for the theory, at the orientation phase, this is what the resistance will say. The critical people will say, oh, the government, we don't think they have the political will, nor the leadership to carry on and do this. So that's the criticism. When we start implementing the transformation process, the next thing that they will say is, okay, maybe they can do it for 1 year, but they don't have the stamina to carry on doing it for 2 years, for 3 years. It will go away after 1 year. So when we start delivering the results, the criticism will be, we like some of the results, but we don't believe the results. The data must be wrong. Tak betul punya. Then the other thing that they will say is, we do not like some of the things that you do. For example, GST. We don't like that. We don't like the rationalization of subsidies. So these are the realm of resistance. So what I'm going to do today, and to share a little bit about an experience I had at Harvard. I was invited to give a talk 2 weeks ago at Harvard University, which is the Kennedy School, and I gave 5 presentations at Harvard. And a professor before me spoke about transformational leadership. And he said, transformation leadership is about disappointing people at the rate they will permit you to. It is about disappointing people at the rate they'll permit you to. In this chart that you can see, there is a circle. It's called the scope of expectation from the Rakyat. So the Rakyat wants you to do everything within that circle. The Rakyat does not want you to do anything outside that circle, because those are popular things. Those are nice things. But some things outside the circle may be the right things to do, but they're unpopular things. So what do you do as a transformational leader, according to Marty Linsky? You have to do some things that are popular. When you do many of those dots, as you say, the popular things on the chart, it gives you the license then to do some things that are outside the circle. So transformational leadership is about dancing on the edge, not operating entirely within the circle. Why? Because if you operate within the circle, you're not going to change the current reality into a new reality, because you have to shift it gradually by moving and changing the boundary. So that is the theory behind transformational leadership. So really, when you talk about transformational leadership, there will be no gain without pain. You will go through some changes, there will be some resistance. Let me now take you through one by one the criticism that we receive from the public and how do we respond to them. The first criticism, we do not believe that the transformation that you guys talk about in the process have any ownership accountability and transparency. Actually, ladies and gentlemen, this chart shows the 8-step process that Dato Sri Sabri Cik described earlier on, is showing that our process has transparency, it has accountability, and it also have clear ownership. The ownership begins with strategic direction workshop, step 1. We have cabinet workshop from the Prime Minister, the DPM, the cabinet ministers. We sit together for solid 1 day to discuss what are the key things and the key priorities of this country. They take this full ownership. So when we talk about ETP and GTP, it is owned collectively by the cabinet. They take ownership. Then we run the labs. In the labs, we get the various ministries involved. We get their ownership as well. So if it is various ministries, all of the staff are inside there, private sectors involved. So we get solid ownership of people. Number 3, open day. Kita buat open day, we get the public to come there. Then we get the ownership from public too, because they are participating in it. They give us their input, what they like about it, what they don't like about it. It's also there. So we get a full ownership from the top to the bottom. Now, transparency. We have a roadmap. We published a roadmap. You know, the ETP, it is 601 pages to the hardworking and avid Malaysian readers. How many of you have read the document in full? We know lah. The problem is Malaysians do not read. Because we know that there are not many Malaysians that read it, we have written an executive summary for the lazy Malaysian, 35 pages only. Adakah baca itu? Some have read it. For those who are very, very lazy, we have also put up a 6-minute video. Tak boleh baca pun, boleh juga. Just watch the video. That also the Malaysians don't watch. So, but the point is, we are transparent about it. It tells you exactly what the government is committed to do, precisely in detail. Why do we publish a document so detailed? Because when you publish the document with such detail, you make the government totally pregnant. You know when you're pregnant, the only thing you have to do if you're pregnant is you have to deliver. So now the government have told the public, this is what we promised to do in detail. We have no choice but to deliver. Kita sudah jadi pregnant lah. Kita sudah mengandung terlalu besar. So we got no choice but to have to deliver. Then, we then give every beginning of the year, every minister receive KPIs from our Prime Minister. Including our DPM, dia ada KPI juga, targets, semua ada. And so this KPI is giving the ownership and accountability to all the ministers. Every 6 months, we have an assessment by the Prime Minister so that the ministers are assessed. They are given scores, each one of them. And then we also list down what they have achieved, what they haven't achieved. By the way, when we have this cabinet assessment by the Prime Minister, there are only 3 people in the room. The Prime Minister, the Minister concerned, and myself lah. And why we don't allow anyone else? Because we want the Minister to take full ownership. He must know exactly what happened in his or her ministry. Cannot bring the KSU to explain it. The Minister must know in detail exactly what's happening. Must account for it because it's about ownership. Then the implementation. We have steering committee meeting led by the Minister and the KSU, everyone that's involved. We do this every month. In fact, the GTP is held. The guy who runs that is our DPM. DPM chairs all of the NKRA's meeting. And that is rigorous that we go through it, including the lead minister. So full of accountability. Number 7, we also make sure that the results, memang betulnya, we get PricewaterhouseCoopers to go and audit it and validate the numbers. If it is not correct, they will change it. And so we have also an international panel, including people from IMF, from World Bank, and the guy who used to do my job in Tony Blair's outfit in the UK, he's also in the panel. So they validate this. Then we do an annual report that we release out to the public every year that gives the full score about what we have achieved, including what we have not achieved. So what we have achieved is marked red. Sorry, what we have achieved is marked green, so check whether you're still awake. If they haven't achieved it, it's marked red. If it's partially achieved, it's yellow. And all the lead ministers, they are the marker. So if you want to know the score of your minister last year, you go to the Pemandu website, you memang tahu dia punya score. I believe we're the only government in the world that is so transparent, so accountable. No government in the world produce an 8-step process and put it out in the public like this. That is why I say, criticism that said that we are not accountable, we don't have ownership, we're not transparent, that is a very unfair criticism. In fact, when I share our methodology with a very senior minister in the Singapore government, you know what he told me? Wow, Idris, you guys in Malaysia are so transparent. You know, there's a fine distinction between transparency, nudity, and pornography. Because we have become terlampau transparent. But that is the point. Under our Prime Minister, we have put in a methodology that calls us to really be accountable. Next. Criticism number 2. The government is introducing policies not based on what the rakyat want, but based on what they want, syok sendiri saja. Let me say, when we identified the national key results areas, these were not chosen just by the cabinet because they're syok sendiri. This was chosen by a method that we use to get public opinion. The first thing that we did was, we had a public perception survey. The reason why they did, I had a gout attack this morning, so I did limping sikit lah. I boleh tahan. So you got that. Thank you. Actually, I better walk a little bit and see if I can tahan. We did a public perception survey in September 2008. Very big survey to ask the Malaysian public, what is it that they want the government to focus on? And they wanted us to focus on crime, education, corruption, unity, and economy. Then we analyzed the media. Everything that appears in the newspapers, social media, semua, we check everything. And for 6 months, the noise in the media, to know what the public want us to focus on. Then the Merdeka survey was also conducted. In this Merdeka survey, it was very clear what the people actually wanted was, those were the things that were concerning to them. And also the cabinet view. So clearly, ladies and gentlemen, when we identified those things called the NKRA, that's what the public want us to focus on. To be clear, corruption, crime, rural infrastructure, urban public transport, low-income household, education, and cost of living. Because the public want us to focus on those. On the economic transformation program, we had 1,000 people in a workshop. All the companies, big, small, and medium, they came to the workshop. And in this workshop, they told us we must focus only on 12 national key economic areas. These are the areas we should focus. Ini bukan chosen by the cabinet. This is chosen by the corporate people. They say these are the ones that will bring the economy up to a level, new level for us. Next one. Next criticism. The ETP and the GTP are just highbrow ideas, very academic lah. Have nothing to do with people want. We don't feel it. Let me say, ladies and gentlemen, I would say, because our program is targeted at specific areas, we are touching the lives of those people. The first one, we build a lot of rural roads. A lot of rural roads that we build, particularly in Sabah and Sarawak. We counted the number of people in those villages that had benefited from the roads. And the electricity, water supply, 5 million people. We also looked at the numbers of people who benefited from our program on education. 3 million primary students have benefited from the NKRA program under our DPM. We also had counted 6 million people in Greater Kuala Lumpur who use our urban public transport, the new KTM train, Pudu Raya that we have now revamped completely. Anyone has been to Pudu Raya in the last 6 months? A few lah. For those of you that have not been there, I encourage you to see it. Go there and look at it. I tell you, we have transformed Pudu Raya beyond recognition. I used to say Pudu Raya was hell on earth. It is totally changed. Any one of you that have been to Bandar Tasik Selatan Terminal, put up your hand. Very good. That one is even better than Gatwick Airport. Trust me. It is really state of the art. We're trying to make it very good for the urban public transport people. 6 million people feel it every day, including our new KTM train that we put, I covered it later. 2.9 million people were lifted out from poverty line because of our minimum wage. They were living below poverty line. Already 6 million people received the BRIM. They also feel it. 275,000 people got out from poverty, extreme poverty. So altogether, ladies and gentlemen, 23.3 million people feel it directly. Why, if you're not the target market, the target audience, obviously you are not the person that we're focusing on lah. So if you don't use urban public transport, you don't feel it. Because you are not the target that we were focusing. And those was because the public, the Malaysian public says, Malaysia government must focus on those things. That's what they told us. So we went to focus on them. And those people are the ones that benefited from it. Criticism number 4. We doubt we can achieve high income economy status by the year 2020. This is very highbrow idea. In fact, I must say there was an event like this. A lot of people were invited. Earlier on, it was in the year 2010 it was. And so Tun Mahathir was on stage. Someone asked him the question, did you think that the Vision 2020 that you set, that you will achieve by the year 2020, in his half-joking manner, he was saying, well, you know, we put the target very, very high. You know, I put it in the year 2020 so that I think I will not be there to deliver it. Because it's a very difficult thing to do. I was in the crowd, actually, in the audience. At the time I joined the cabinet, I put up my hands. I said, Tun, I would like to respond. We believe in the Vision 2020 that you put out there. Not only do we believe in it, we are totally committed to deliver it. We are convinced with the methodology that we set under Prime Minister that we will achieve it. He said, good luck to you all. This chart, ladies and gentlemen, shows very clearly that we are on the way to getting there. The red line is the World Bank's definition of what constitutes high-income economy. That means gross national income per capita. By the way, they only change the number every year. They don't have a number today for the year of 2020. They only have the number for the year 2013. 2014, World Bank haven't put a number yet. For the next report, they'll put the number. So our line is the blue line. We are closing the gap so rapidly. Next chart, please. If you do a linear regression, you do a very simple linear regression, it shows clearly that we will be able to achieve the high income status by the year 2020. If we're lucky, maybe a little bit earlier. But we're confident today on the pace that we're going, and 8.27% annual growth per annum, the CAGR, and that is actually very positive. Next slide, please. This is a good chart. If you don't believe me, then I think maybe let's look at what other people say about us. This is the OECD prediction. According to OECD, they believe that Malaysia will achieve high-income economy status by the year 2020. According to them, China will get there in the year 2026. According to them, Thailand, 31. Indonesia, 42. Philippines, 51. Vietnam, 2058. India, 2059. This is not my slide. This is the OECD's prediction on the basis of countries as they progress. Who do they believe will get there quicker? So they are saying that we can get there as well. So that's good. Criticism number 5. Yeah, but fine, Idris, you guys are going to get to high-income economy, but I see poverty still in the country, and you people in the government are not doing enough. for the bottom 40%. Let me show the good news about what Malaysia has been doing for a long time, since 1970. This chart here is the number that describes our fight against absolute poverty, miskin tegar. And we've been able to reduce that from 49% in the year 1970 to now less than 0.6%. So it is a very, very big improvement. For those of you who want to look at the statistics, the word Gini coefficient describes the level of inequality in a country. So the lower the number, the better it is. So one, if it's one Gini coefficient, that's totally unequal. So if it is 0, then that means it is equal. Now Malaysia has made an improvement. So now we're at 0.42. It's an improvement from what it was in 2009, 0.441. And also the bottom 40%, people who are in the lower income bracket, their income has increased radically from 1,400 in the year 2009. It's increased to 2,537. The incidence of poverty hardcore has really dropped to 0.6. Now, let me now go a little deeper. In this chart, you can see the top line is the annual growth for the average household in the whole of Malaysia. If you take all households, our average growth of their salary over the last 4 years is what is called 8.8%. Now, this one below here is the midpoint. The midpoint, that means if you take all of the household, rank them from 1 to bottom, and you take the midpoint. That one has also grown by 10.1%. Inflation over the same period is only grown by 2.4%. So if you take 8 minus 8 or 10 minus 1, 10.1 minus 2.4, the difference is called the increase in disposable income. So that means the average household in Malaysia, our income have risen much higher than inflation. The next one is the bottom 40%. This is the best story. The bottom 40%, their income has risen even higher than the average Malaysians. That has grown by more than 12%. Whether you take the average or you take the median, midpoint. We have, as I said to you, lifted out 2.9 million people out from poverty line with one stroke of a decision that we took, that is minimum wage. When I joined Shell in 1982, do you know at the time my first job in Shell was industrial relations officer. I remember in 1982, there were discussion in the Malaysian government to introduce minimum wage in 1982. Nobody dared to implement it because it was difficult to do. It is today, ladies and gentlemen, under the leadership of Prime Minister and this cabinet, we were able to actually implement it. And by doing the implementation, we lifted the lives of 2.9 million people outside from abject poverty. And that is a very, very big improvement. Let me now read an external report, what the World Bank has said about Malaysia. This is the World Bank report that was recently released last year. Let me read it clearly. Malaysia has in many ways become a success story in shared prosperity. Shared prosperity means that all households experience income growth. But growth is higher for those households at the bottom of the distribution, a pattern that leads us to lower inequality. In the past 40 years, Malaysia drew on its natural resources to nearly eradicate absolute poverty from 49% in the year 1970 to 1% in 2014. So this is what the World Bank is saying about us. So I think the criticism is unfounded. Let me also take another external perspective. This is coming from the Asian Development Bank. The ADB, in the conference of May 2013, they said since 2009, which happens to be when our Prime Minister took over, Malaysia has made the biggest progress in reducing poverty. 55.3% reduction in poverty because of the work of the government. If you compare that, Philippines only 2.5%. Ours 55% reduction. Indonesia, 6%. According to them, Thailand had made it worse. By 62.6% made it worse. Vietnam had improved by only reduction of 6%. So according to ADB, Malaysia had made the biggest progress in reducing abject poverty. So that is from the external perspective. Criticism number 6. I know the economy is growing, government revenue is achieved record high, but how come I don't see that the government is using the revenue to help the people? Let me say it's true that our government revenue has become record every year. So this is a new record, 185 in 2011, etc. But you know, we were in deficit. When we started, our fiscal deficit stood at negative 6.4% of GDP. That means our revenue is less than our expenditure. So when you increase your revenue, you're still at the point that you are less than the expenditure. So that is, we were using our additional revenue to reduce our deficit. So you can see every single year, we reduce our deficit. We have not removed entirely our deficit. Kita ada lagi deficit. But the reason why, because we are using some of our money for development expenditure to grow the economy. Let me show to you so that we all understand why it is very tough, because the government have many commitments. Last year, our total revenue was 221 billion ringgit, okay? Let me just say, how do we spend that money? Commitments. Of that, 67 billion is spent on paying salaries of our 1.4 million civil servants, all of us lah. That one cannot be reduced. There's no corruption involved with that, because that's your gaji lah. So, but the people that simply look at the number and say, well, this is money is all because of corruption, that's not true. Pensions, there is 18 billion ringgit we have to pay pensions for the civil servants. So then, how much do we spend per year to pay for our debt, our borrowing? Altogether, 23 billion. How much subsidies do we put? Altogether last year, 40 billion ringgit of subsidies for electricity, for tolls, public health, public transport, all of this, 40 billion. The grants that we give to state government, because all state government, federal government give grants too, and also the state-owned enterprise, the GLC, kita ada grant juga. And that is altogether 23 billion. And the others, 15 billion is for scholarships and for grants to school, etc., etc. Now, all of the ministries put together, all 30 ministries or 29 ministries, 34 billion ringgit. So we have very little room to maneuver because the commitment is fixed. And that's why the government is in a very tight spot. Although we get our increase in revenue, we are still struggling because we are starting on a deficit. So to be clear, ladies and gentlemen, we are doing the best we can with the limited resources that we have, but that is the best we can do. That is why it's got no choice. We have to reduce the subsidy. No choice. Criticism number 7. I am from Kapit. Some of you do not know Kapit is a very small place in Sarawak lah. I am from Kapit. Oh, by the way, there's also a village that PM went to. For those people who are Chinese, they will consider this a little funny lah. That village is called Ulu La Chao. You have to be careful how you pronounce lah. Ulu La Chao. So the guy said, I am from Ulu La Chao, and I do not think you people in the government are doing enough on rural infrastructure. Actually, ladies and gentlemen, the fact of the matter is that in the last 4 years or 5 years, we built the most kilometers of rural road in this country for the same period of time since independence. We build altogether, if you string all the rural roads, that's 4,533 kilometers of rural roads. If you put them all together in one straight line, it is like the distance from Kuala Lumpur all the way to Kathmandu. If you want to, you can also stretch it from Johor Bahru to Bangladesh. And that is actually a phenomenal thing. So this is very good. These are the numbers of people we gave water to, electricity, all those villages, and a lot of them, you know, we live in a country that is very modern in this part in the city, but in the rural places where I come from, my tribe is called a Klabit tribe. There are only 5,500 people in the whole world. We are so small, you can put us all in the zoo lah. Very, very small. But we live in the village there. You know, we don't have electricity in my village until only this year. We now got electricity too. And there are many, many villages like that. And still, we are working hard to do this. Next slide, please. I am worried about the children's education in this country because I believe that the standards of education has dropped in this country. What we're doing in Malaysia is that we are also concerned about this. That's why we've introduced the National Education Blueprint. Very thick document about the roadmap, how we are going to improve it. By the way, we've ranked every school in this country from number 1 to number 10,000. We have 10,000 primary and secondary school. We know which one is number 1. We also know which is number 10,000. We originally wanted to publish the rank order of all the schools. Then the principal said, wow, please don't put it like that because my school is number 10,000. If you say to everybody that my school is 10,000, they become a ghost school because no parents will send the kids there. So they said the compromise is, why don't you put them in bands? So DPM agreed that we put in band 1 means the best performing school, but you don't say which one, number 1, number 2, band 2, and band 3. We have band 7 is the worst performing. The good news is over the last 5 years, we have made big improvement in band 1 and 2. 31% of the schools in band 1 and 2 now have increased from originally 19.4%. That is massive improvement. We also have a big reduction in the band 6 and 7, including the very, very rural schools. Let me say, despite the fact that some schools do not have good facilities, I went to a very rural school in Sarawak. This is an Iban school, Sekolah Ulu Lubai. Very rural school, flooded 6 times a year, very poor facilities. In the year 2011, I believe it's one of the best primary school in Malaysia. Now, when I visited it, DPM also visited it. Do you know what time the kids go to school every day? 5:30 a.m. What time do they finish in the school? 10 p.m. Whoa. And they had a small room like this. And in the room, all the awards, they menang. All sorts of awards. From Turkey, Commonwealth, they menang. The scores of the students are very, very good. In fact, the funny part of the story, there was one award, National School for Bowling in Kuantan. Hui, mana ada bowling alley in Ulu Lubai? How do you learn how to do this? Dia pakai tembikai. So they went there because they're so determined, they menang juga. Now, the interesting thing was, the literacy and numeracy in the school is so fantastic. At an event like this, an MOE event, there was one teacher in Kelantan that challenged Principal Jaul. Jaul is the principal for the Sekolah Ulu Lubai. Then he said, oh, you are lucky, the students are doing well, 100% marks, etc. Because you are lucky, your students are good. My students in Kelantan, in my school, they're never going to read and write. Why don't I challenge you? I send 20 of my students to your school, you teach them to read and write. So Jaul said, okay. So they sent 24 Kelantanese kids from their school to Sekolah Ulu Lubai and stay in the longhouse for 2 months. After 2 months, send them back to Kelantan, all can read and write. Why I tell you this story is this. It is not about the facilities. It is not about the gaji of the teachers actually, because the teachers there the same gaji juga. It is about the principal dedication and the teachers' dedication and the parents getting involved and the students wanting to study. Actually, to me, not to do with the curriculum per se, because the same curriculum. We have done a lot of work on literacy and numeracy. We have made big improvement. Today, the numeracy score of our students in primary 1, 2, and 3, and 4, based on the Linus test, is already now 98.9%. And literacy is now 88%. This was big improvement from what it was before when we started. We are also concerned about the proficiency of the English language. So we decided to put all of our English teachers to sit for the Cambridge placement test. You know, when I spoke about this, I was invited to speak at Oxford University last month. And I showed this chart to the faculty leaders at the government school in Oxford University. The dean almost fell off a chair. He said, Idris, can you imagine you go and ask all the teachers in England who have been teaching for 20 years, and you ask them to sit for the test, you have a strike. But in Malaysia, we did it. We got 70,000 of our teachers who teach English to sit for the Cambridge placement test. No strike. Actually, the sad news is that 70% of them did not quite make the standard. But we know them by name today. Under DPM, we have now organized an event, a very big program, to take them to classroom over weekend and at night to make sure that they improve their command of English language. We are very serious. So people who think that we are not serious about what we're trying to do under the program, this hopefully will tell you that we are very serious about it. Criticism number 9. Oh, we fear going out because crime is on the rise. Malaysia is no longer safe. We heard about this so many times. But ladies and gentlemen, before our National Transformation Program, you can see from this chart that it has been rising every year. When we did the GTP, actually we managed to bring it down by 40% reduction. I know you don't believe lah. I know you don't believe. Because every time I show this, every time I show people get angry, ini tak betul lah. But I'm telling you, this is the data. Okay, let's look at other data. Data that's not collected by us. These are external data from Nation Master. Nation Master is one of the authorities that publish crime data across countries. According to them, for a population of 100,000 people, the highest crime is actually UK. 6,500 incidents of crime per 100,000 population. Followed by South Africa, 4,143, and then Hong Kong. And USA, Hong Kong. Actually, Malaysia, they say only 550. But that's their number, it's not my number. They say our number is actually low compared to the others. So because you don't believe the police number, I'm giving you the external number. If you don't believe that one, I give you another one. This is the number of cars that are stolen and the insurance claim. There were 14,843 cars stolen last year, and they claimed their insurance this year only dropped down to 12,122. It cannot be that people are not claiming their insurance. If you lost your car, surely you go and get insurance. This is not the police punya number. This is the total insurance claim. That also dropped. That is similar to our police data. Our police says that 16,753 cars that were stolen in the year 2013, that has dropped by 19% to 13,407. We know them by numbers also. Proton 7,139, Toyota 1,499, and this collaborate with this. So clearly, without doubt, ladies and gentlemen, it is very clear the insurance numbers tell us clearly the data for the crime has dropped down when we take that. Let's look at other countries. Australia, actually, the crime data has gone down. Crime incidents gone down. What do the Aussies say? 90% of the Australians believe that crime is going up, not reducing. Although the data is going like that, the Australians say it is going up. Actually, they say 64% of Australians say crime is on the rise in Australia, despite the fact that incidents of crime come down. 26% of them say it's level. The same thing happened in the UK. Same story. There is a 90% gap between the facts and the perception. The same thing in the US. Ladies and gentlemen, why? Because of social media. Because of what is also in the mainstream media. In the social media, they report one incident that took place. In fact, they also repeat the same story. In fact, it happened 4 years ago. They say the same thing, but nobody can verify it's the same story that happened 4 years ago. But it goes viral. This problem here exists not just in Malaysia, it exists in the US, it exists in the UK, exists in Australia, many others, because the gap between reality and perception is a massive thing that goes through the social media. And so I think we have to be very careful in handling this story. Criticism number 10. people are not satisfied with the National Transformation Program, and it's a waste of taxpayer money. Frost and Sullivan did a survey, and in the survey, 82% of Malaysians say that the transformation program is good. And the Institute Integrity Malaysia says 72% of Malaysians say it's good. So on the whole, they said thumbs up. Public transport is unreliable and it's bad. We don't see that work you're doing is improving it. I told you already before, Pudu Raya was hell on earth. I actually wrote an article about it in Transformation Unplugged. When I was a student in USM, I used to take the bus all the way from there. Oh, that was really, really terrible. But I can tell you it's big improvement today. You know how many new buses did we bring in over the last 4 years? 470 rapid KL buses. We also bought 38 new KTM trains, all the way from China, brand new ones. The service has now improved. On-time performance, 97.5% on time. Compared to where it was when we started, only 60%. We put Go KL buses. Anybody use a Go KL bus? Oh, you people are very rich, all drive. The Go KL buses, we introduced free buses within the central business district. Why? Because we wanted to decongest the central business district. So that you can no need to use your driving within, you can jump onto the bus free. So we have the Go KL. We have 4 buses that move around. By the way, it also increased the tourist expenditure. We empty their wallet because they have to go and jump onto a bus, to go to the next shopping mall, then they spend their money. We bought also 35 more new cassette trains for our the LRT. So really, ladies and gentlemen, we have made a lot of progress. Customer satisfaction, borne by independent survey, showed that people are, now the score has moved from 71% previous year to last year to 86% customer satisfaction. So the public who use it, they say it is good. The people who criticize it do not use it. We are also trying to build a high-speed rail that connects Singapore all the way to Kuala Lumpur. If you fly today from KL to Singapore, door to door, it takes you 4 hours. When we finish the high-speed rail, it will be 90 minutes. That's the first service. We also have a second service that go through Kuala Lumpur, Putrajaya, Seremban, Aikro, Muar, Batu Pahat, Nusa Jaya, and Selangor, not Selangor pula, Singapore. That's 120 minutes. We are building the MRT. So this first line is 62% completed. If you don't believe that we are doing work and delivering it, you cannot ignore the MRT. Every day you can see it. And so this work is 62% complete, 51 kilometers in length, 24 elevated stations, etc. We are now going to build the MRT2 that connects it all the way from Sungai Buloh, Serdang, Putrajaya. And so this is, the next one after this will be the circle line. We put the circle line within the center, and that will integrate all the public transport to an integrated network, connecting the LRT together with the MRT, together with the LRT, the buses, all, then we become a network. So when we build the circle line, that was how we network them. By that time, when we finish doing this, there will be only one card. One card for toll highways, the same card for paying MRT, for buses, some more. We use only one card, and we are working towards making that happen. So this is how we will improve our whole public transport. Criticism number 12. They say business people are not confident in the Malaysian economy, so not investing. Not true, ladies and gentlemen. The data shows what happened before the economic transformation, what happened after the economic transformation program. We used to grow per year only at 5.4%, our investment. What has happened? We've grown our investment by more than 2.5 times. Not 100%, 250% increase in the CAGR to 13.6%. This is actually phenomenal growth. And the beauty here is that the bulk of that is private sector. That is really very good. Not government, it's the private sector. Tok Pa is in charge. He's a minister, Dato Sri Mustafa Muhammad. He has been working very hard with MIDA to make sure that we get the investment. You look at the approved MIDA numbers. Every year, the dark blue lines, bars, It shows that we have now in the pipeline a new record every year for private investment. Not yet realized, but in the pipeline and plan. So clearly, the business community has full confidence in the government because they are investing. If not, why do you think they have put record investment every year since the year 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, and 2014? All of them new record because they have confidence in this economy. Whatever you say about everything, the confidence level is proven by the wallet. If you take your wallet, you invest in the country, that means you have confidence. There is no other reasons why you will invest if you have no confidence. Then criticism number 13. People are saying, oh, Malaysians' debt is so high, 87% of GDP. So this country is gone case. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to tell you the good news. Malaysian household assets is huge. Our household asset is 322% of the GDP. The problem with the US, when they had the subprime crisis a few years ago, what was the problem? They went into very high household debt, and it was not backed by the asset of the houses. Because the debt was triple times, many, many times more than the value of the asset. And that is, of course, a problem. In our case, that is not the problem. Next slide, please. Criticism number 14. You okay? Okay. We have to be very careful in this country because otherwise we go bankrupt. There are many people out there that are talking about this country will go bankrupt. I know you're going to point at me, because one time I used that word. Let me clarify. I said this. If Malaysia does not do an economic transformation program, and if our economy grows at less than 3%, and if our national debt rises by 12.5% per year, then we will become bankrupt in the year 2019. I still say that. But what did we do? We implemented the economic transformation program. We cut our fiscal deficit. We've been growing our gross national income at a rate of 8.27% on a CAGR per annum. We're not going bankrupt, ladies and gentlemen. And you can see, this data shows we've been cutting our fiscal deficit. Many governments promise that they will cut their fiscal deficit, but they don't do it. We, in Malaysia, we promise it, we deliver it every single year. There's not a single year since 2009 that we did not meet our target. We consistently delivered on it. Next slide, please. This is a very important BCG chart. And BCG are of the view, the vertical axis. This is government debt as percentage of GDP, the vertical axis. The horizontal axis is the fiscal position of the country. Is it in surplus or is it in deficit? According to them, if a country, their punya loan, the borrowing, is greater than 100% of the GDP, and that same country has a fiscal deficit worse off than 8%, then they belong to the bankrupt category. They call it politely sovereign crisis level, the red zone. But if you are a country that has a borrowing that is lower than 70%, our debt, and you are at fiscal deficit of better than 4%, then you belong in what is called safe zone. When we started, Malaysia in 2009 was the orange dot on the your left-hand side. Then 2010, we moved to the right. 2011, further to the right. 2012, further to the right. 2013, we're inside the safe zone. And 2014, we're well inside the safe zone. So, economically, fiscally, our country is very well managed because we have been looking at this picture and we've been designing our model so that we move in there. By the way, Singapore's debt level is already at 100% GDP. Japan's debt is 190% of GDP. Portugal and France and the UK, they are all at 90% or 80% of GDP. So ours is still at 53.3%, well below the threshold that people put out there. So there is no cause for alarm because Malaysia is in the safe zone. We have moved clearly out from where we were before, every single year moving there. So there is no issue about us going bankrupt unless we change everything we do. But we are clear, we are on the right path, we are proceeding down the path. Under the 11 Malaysia plan, which my friend Dato Sri Wahid and the EPU have led us through, and the presented PM had recently announced this, we will be able to reduce our government debt further from 53% to 43% by the year 2020. We don't increase, we will bring it down as a percentage of the GDP. Our fiscal deficit will become neutral in the year 2020, no more deficit by the year 2020. We will be able to grow our economy so that we achieve high income status. So we are clear about our 11 Malaysia plan, where we're going. Criticism number 15. Oh, we are over-reliant on oil and gas. So when oil price come down, then Malaysia memang teruk lah. Ladies and gentlemen, every single year from 2009, we have been reducing our reliance on oil and gas. When we started, Malaysia's government revenue, more than 40% came out from oil and gas. In fact, it's now reduced to 29.7 last year. So we're not as reliant on oil and gas as we used to because of the 12 national key economic areas. All of them have been growing, including communications and infrastructure, one of the NKEAs. All of them have been growing. And that has been able to help cushion the contribution that we have to rely on oil and gas. Next slide, please. GST is a shamble because it's fueling inflation. So we don't like what you guys are doing in government. That's a criticism. I must say, ladies and gentlemen, in the whole world, 169 countries have implemented GST. The experience of all the countries have implemented GST is that for the first 1 or 2 years, there is an increase in inflation for a while, but after the second year or the third year, it will come back to normal. Our view is that temporarily, perhaps for the year 2015 and 16, inflation will rise up to 4% because of the implementation of GST. 2017, it will come back to 2.6%, and then eventually to our normality within 2 years. And this is the experience born in Singapore and Australia and many other countries. Criticism number 17. Oh, you guys are doing a lot of things, but you're not doing enough on corruption, and therefore your corruption perception index is not improving. But the data from the Transparency International shows the reverse. We have made improvement. Our score has moved and improved from 4.3% to 5.2% last year. So it's big, there's small improvement. It's not as big as we'd like them to be, but it's an improvement. Our ranking has moved from number 60 to number 50. So there's a steady improvement. There's a long way to go. But to say that we are not making progress is not true. We are making progress. BRIM is a waste of money. We shouldn't be spending BRIM. There are a lot of people who criticize the use of BRIM. Let me say this. I told you already we spent 40 billion ringgit on total subsidy in our budget last year. And a large chunk of that for fuel. Why do we introduce BRIM? Because when we reduce the subsidy, that means increase the petrol price and the diesel, many people who in the bottom 40%, they could not afford it. They really struggle to make ends meet. So the government have decided we factor the cost, the additional cost of fuel for these people as a result of the price increase. We then put it in a money form and give it to them in the form of BRIM. That means all the people whose income are below 3,000 will receive it in cash to recognize the increase due to putting the price to market. What did we do when we implemented GST? The same thing. We calculated the 4% increase that could happen for items that are procured and purchased by the bottom 40%. We put it in 300 ringgit for BRIM, and then we added it onto BRIM, because that is payment to compensate for what was coming out from the increase of inflation due to GST. So GST is not the waste of government money. It is money that we save from implementing GST or from subsidy rationalization, and additional revenue for implementing GST, and we give some for the people who really deserve and need it. people in the bottom 40%. I am of the view, and the whole cabinet, it is a collective decision of the entire cabinet that we believe that BRIM is a good methodology to assist. By the way, this idea of BRIM originally came from Bank Negara. Bank Negara were the original group that said we have to implement BRIM because when we rationalize the subsidy, when we begin to introduce GST, there will be some inflationary impact. And therefore, we better give some cash to help those who really deserve it. So I am of the view that what we're doing under this is correct. Criticism number 20. You don't do enough for Bumi Putras. But you see, under Teraju, we set up Teraju. In Teraju, we have 520 small, medium enterprise Bumi companies that are being helped to grow so that they can become world beaters, they become good and successful. We also have a lot of money, 100 million allocated by the economic corridor through facilitation fund for Bumi Putra companies. We also identified 10 government-linked companies under Khazanah and PNB to divest to Bumi, small Bumi companies, and etc. We got a lot of money that we put under the trust program and etc. By the way, 45% of the MRT project were carved out for Bumi companies. But what did we do? We asked the Bumi companies to compete. The best Bumi company will get it. So we took 45% of all the MRT project, and we told the Bumi company, non-Bumi cannot apply. Only the Bumi companies can apply, but they must do competitive bidding. We don't want Alibaba type of Bumi companies. We want the real Bumi companies that participate and they get awarded the contract on the basis of merit. Criticism number 21. So I'm going to go on until we finish. I don't believe your results. Very nice statistics, Idris. PM announced this under our the annual report. By the way, all the data I presented to you, PM already announced this, and that was part of the reason why we want to thank you this afternoon as well. By the way, we have an external audit and validation process. PricewaterhouseCoopers, every year, they look at our data and verify it, and they certify on the annual report that the data is valid, it's in order. If there are any changes, they were changed before the audit is released. If you go to the Pemandu website, you can print our annual report. You can see exactly what PwC has put in the report. We are very transparent. We also have transparency coming out from the international panel, which include IMF people, we include ex-World Bank people, other countries. In fact, the guy who used to do, the co-founder of Transparency International is part of the panel as well. It's Michael Hersman. And so they give us a lot of input to confirm and validate our results. Next criticism. I don't believe they are real examples. Your statistics, only statistics. There are no projects, not real. You are only talking concepts. But ladies and gentlemen, we have more than 100 over entry point projects. I can give you on and on the examples. I'll give you an example. This one, you can see it every day, the MRT. MRT is part of the Greater KL. If we didn't do the economic transformation, ladies and gentlemen, we will not be building this. I want to digress a little bit. I want to say a little story. I went down to look at the tunnel that has been completed. We built already the tunnel around, running through our city, You know, in my mind, I expected to see very seasoned engineers, muscular, very experienced people who build it. When I walked down, nobody was like that. They're all very young Malaysians. All very young, including girls. The whole work for the tunnel boring machine is all done by machine, automated. They sit in a little, like a pilot cockpit, send the signal through the subsurface. The signals come back to say what kind of rock formation is there. Is it limestone? Is it Kenny Hill formation, etc.? And then they change the drill bit. And then they correct the lubang. And all the things will come back through a pipe-like thing, like a factory, and dispose. Even the cladding on the tunnel is done by machine. And all of these operated by young Malaysians. Truly one Malaysia down there. You have girls down there, you have Malays, you have Indian, we have all sorts of people, no Klabit there lah. But really, it was really nice to see them. They're all together, one Malaysia. I was very proud of seeing what they were doing there. You know, we are building this. Have any one of you been to Pengerang? Only 3 people only go to Pengerang. Very few people know about Pengerang actually. I must confess, I didn't know about Pengerang. Just like many people don't know about Bareau lah. When we ran the lab, you know what everybody said? We have Shell, we have Exxon, we have Petronas, we have Talisman, everybody in the room. 8 weeks locked there. And we asked the question, how can we improve oil and gas in this country? What was the challenge? The question was, how come Singapore does not have one drop of molecule of oil and gas, yet they have the biggest refinery in the region? How come Singapore does not have one drop of molecule of oil and gas? They have the biggest petrochemical complex in the region. And they have the biggest oil trading in the region. How come? You could hear a pin drop. So it was in those labs, we then came with the idea, together with Petronas, that we must build an oil and gas hub in southern Johor. And that's a place called Pengerang. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a huge project that you cannot ignore, because you cannot see it from here lah. You got to go to Johor and go to Pengerang, you see it. 20,000 acres. It's like, you know, this is a massive war zone. Construction happening everywhere, 20,000. By the way, the terminal already operated. The oil terminal already operational in April. Already jalan. In fact, the whole area is going to attract a total investment of 170 billion ringgit. I think for one town, Pengerang must attract the most amount of investment in the whole country for a small town lah. And so this is incredible. By the way, the number of families, the graveyard that we have to shift, actually, we had to shift something like 3,000 graveyards. 932 homes, we have to build the homes to relocate people. This is a very serious matter. In fact, you know, we had to form a company that is co-chaired between myself as well as the MB of Johor. And we meet to solve all these problems, to make these things happen. So there is huge cooperation happening between the federal government and the state government to cause this to happen. Otherwise, Petronas and the rest of the investments cannot happen there, because they cannot handle the shifting of the graveyard. It's a government job. They cannot handle the building of the water supply and electricity to all the, and the roads. That is what the government is doing. So the whole of government is working together to make this happen. And so really, when you think about it, this is a good example. You know, we also, next slide, please. Many people do not know this. We built in 2013, for the first time, a regas terminal offshore Malacca. Why do we do it? Because we don't have enough gas coming out from Peninsular Malaysia to give us electricity. Tak cukup dah. We have a lot of gas, but it's Sabah and Sarawak. But we cannot bring it because we don't have a pipeline that connects it. So what do we need to do? We had to build a regas terminal. That means we can import the gas from there to put it here. We can also import from outside. Let me make a confession. We nearly had huge problem in the year, I think 2012. There was 4 days in that year, towards the end of the year, I was concerned that we were going to have a national blackout. I was in charge of the national gas crisis. I can talk about it today because we didn't have a blackout. Why was we concerned? Because for 4 days, we had to do a plant shutdown. In many of the plants that provided all of our electricity, we had to do a maintenance shutdown. 30% was reduction. This is around Christmas time. PM said to me, Idris, whatever you do, we must not have a national blackout. We had a team ready to deal with this in a crisis form. We had to summon everybody from the industry, from Petronas, from Tenaga, everybody. So all as the steel companies working together to work together to make sure we don't have a crisis. I can tell you it was very panicky situation. But the only way we could solve this problem permanently was to build this terminal. And we built it, we completed this on time, and now last year we had 23 LNG cargoes that were brought in to give us lights. The fact that we don't have any blackout today, national blackout, is because we built this. And this is actually a massive investment that Petronas, more than R1 billion to do this. It was very tough, I can tell you, that we had to do this. And people don't know this. These are very hard measures that we had to take. The upstream, many of our oil palm trees have grown. But if you don't replant them, then our yields will come down and our harvest will come down. We no longer become number 2 in the world. So we decided after the lab, we had to plant a lot of new oil palm trees. In fact, altogether, over the last 4 years, we planted more than 50 million trees. By the way, the size of the area we planted under the NKEA is actually 5.8 times Singapore. That is the massive work that was done. Even then, we were still marked as red. We were behind schedule because we put the target even bigger. In fact, the 2 ministers had very low KPIs because the target was very high. He didn't achieve it because we put it like that. Next. On wholesale and retail, you know, anyone has been to KLI 2? Very big shopping mall, isn't it? That was why we were doing it, because we wanted to transform KLI 2 so that it became a shopping mall. That was one of the projects. Next slide, please. Anyone have been to the Mitsui Outlet Park? Baru, the new one. By the way, this is the biggest outlet park in Southeast Asia. If you don't believe me, go and see it. But we believe we have to have a huge opportunity to get the tourists that come into Malaysia to be able to shop there, and we can get a lot of tourist receipt. So when I talk about shopping, everybody wake lah, because it's very big. Next slide, please. We are doing a lot of work on pharmaceutical. I'm not going to spend time on it. By the way, I only want to mention we have a lab called Seniors Living. All of us are go now because we are very young. I'm jalan, go. Slowly, when you grow older, then slow go. Lama-lama is no go. So we will all go there. So that is why we're now saying we better think about a good program for the seniors, for people like us when we grow older lah. So now we're encouraging the private sector to build elderly homes that are very friendly for people. And this is a great opportunity because most of us will live a little longer lah. By the way, my grandmother is still alive. She's 106 years old. She can thread the smallest needle without glasses today. Still alive. And so she's blessed. The only thing I remember is that we asked the question, how come, what is it that my grandmother has done that none of us in the whole family do? There's no one that can remember any time that we saw my grandmother get angry. Never got angry, not a single time. So I think it pays to be nice lah. Education, pass. I think pass that one. I told you about the urban public transport. There are a lot of projects that's so visible on urban public transport I covered before. Next slide, please. I told you already about crime. I didn't tell you, but there are 161 Kedai Rakyat Satu Malaysia. Why did we put the Kedai Rakyat Satu Malaysia? Because the people in the bottom 40% were really concerned about rising cost of living. That's why we introduced the CRIM. Next slide. There is also people saying that employers are not paying enough to their employees. If you compare the situation in Malaysia, if you take the profit of the companies, of all the companies in Malaysia, and then how much of the profit is given to the employees. In the year 2010, it's only 31.5%. The bulk of it goes to the shareholders. So we are trying to move to our target so that it become at least 40% lah. They share more to our employees. And so gradually there has been steady improvement that is not as high as in Singapore. Singapore is 42.6, and Norway is 45. So there are some progress, but not all of it. There are also criticism about our ringgit depreciating in value. Let me look at some data here. This is a little data, the data. from September 2014 to March this year, this shows the currency, where the currencies had depreciated, has dropped in value. But for the previous year, from February 2014 to August 2014, in fact, the red line shows that they were appreciating in value. Why did they all drop? All of those, not just Malaysia, by the way, all the other countries also dropped. Because the ringgit dropped, because the US currency has appreciated in value. It is the US currency that has strengthened, hence the ringgit, and the other currencies have dropped. Why is ours drop higher than others? Because people think that oil price has dropped. We are over-reliant on oil price, so they factored it in our value of the currency. Oil price dropped, the US currency is appreciated. So this has impacted us. But the good news is Bank Negara have said that in the year 1997, our foreign reserve was very small. It was only 21.7 billion US dollars. What is our reserve now? 110 billion US dollars. So it's massive foreign reserve that we have to withstand any shocks. If we want to execute it, we have the capability to do what we need to do to intervene, if it is necessary. Other people are saying that, yeah, Idris, you are doing well, but you are not doing as good compared to many other governments based on the international benchmark. Not true. We have been making progress. On the World Bank Ease of Doing Business ranking, we have been steadily improving. We are number 18 now. In the IMD competitive ranking, we are number 12. And then on the Global Competitiveness World Economic Forum, we are now number 20. So we are steadily improving on all counts. So clearly, even based on international benchmark, out of 100 over countries, we are making progress. And by the way, I also want to say, Harvard has written a case study on our economic transformation program. They like our work. They actually teach it in Harvard Business School and the Kennedy School of Government in Harvard. Princeton has written 2 case studies on our government transformation program. In fact, Bloomberg and Nesta have said Pemandu is among the top 20 most innovative government agencies in the world. In fact, the same year, last year, they said Idris Jala, according to them, one of the most influential people among the top 50 in the world. Nice to know, but maybe they was too kind. Now they say this. This is the last criticism. Finally, because if you go on, we stay all night, You guys are not communicating enough. Let me say this. Yes, we agree. We're not communicating enough. We're not communicating as effectively as we do. That is why we decided to have a much more fresh and innovative approach. The Prime Minister and Cabinet agreed that we set up a STRATCOM, Strategic Communications, led by your Minister, Dato Sri Sabrichik. He leads this. And so we meet every week to make sure we coordinate our communications in a way that is integrated. So therefore, the STRATCOM, led by Dato Sri Sabrichik, is a very good platform for doing that. We must do what is called the ADA model for communication. That means advocacy, advocate the good things about our country. So if we believe in our country, you must talk about good things. You cannot all day long spend your time saying bad things about this country. If all day long you say bad things about this country, then nobody will invest in this country. And then we start losing our confidence as a country too. So we must advocate good things about our country. And the second thing is, when people give us criticism that is unfounded, we better defend. Like in a game of football. People want to score, you must have a defender there. You must defend. Sometimes the Brazilian football, the best form of defense to attack. So that means you attack. So there's a time when people are giving you all the information that are not true. There's a time that I think we need to not only just defend but attack. But I think most importantly, we have to find a way how to communicate not with the head, not just with the head. A lot of my story today is about the head, because I'm talking to clever people. But really out there, you must talk to the heart too, from here to here. So we need to use an emotional way to connect. I'm talking to the experts. You people are the experts in communication. So I'm going to tell you this story in the hope that you take the intellectual discourse that I give to you, and you will then convert the story in a way that is able to communicate it emotionally, what is called emotional connect. We're going to suggest a net geo style of communication to connect the various ministers together with the KSUs and the DGs and the people making the connection. And this is the platform that we intend to work with you, and this is what Dato Sri Sabri and the Stratcom feels that we should do. It's called the Net Geo style of program. We will do that. For example, if we have a program on ministerial capabilities and effectiveness involving the Home Ministry, so if it is the Home Ministry, then the theme will be about inclusiveness and sustainability. So the public policies and the best practices, for example, a one-stop center. If they put a one-stop center that deals all the problems that are there for biometric, lab, for everything, etc., then we will line up the various stakeholders, right from the minister to the DGs, the KSUs, and the relevant officers. They can be interviewed, and what they say about it on television. And we can cut them in bite size. Then the stories can go into social media, and it go into YouTube, and it will go into all sorts of things. So this is what we are trying very hard to do. But the idea is to make the communication touch the people, so that the people will be interviewed too. Rural infrastructure, the same thing. So we go and make documentary about the village, the people that enjoy the village, including the KTM. There's a lot of stories we can talk. There are 275,000 people who got out from poverty from our work under low-income household. You interview them. I think you cannot even finish the program just to do that alone. You can go out to people to look at even our BRT. Have you read about the BRT in Sunway? Fantastic, 5.4 kilometers. For the first time in history, we now have electric buses, elevated highway on top of there. On time, every single bus is on time because no cars can use the elevated bus lanes. So 500,000 people in that community is benefiting today from it. So 500,000, you can create a documentary about this. You can talk to Liao, who's the minister in charge, and interview SPAD. So the stories can be so many. And to be honest with you, we will run out of space to put the stories about these 23.3 million people whose lives were touched by this work. Just to do that alone. You can go out to people to look at even our BRT. Have you read about the BRT in Sunway? Fantastic, 5.4 kilometers. For the first time in history, we now have electric buses, elevated highway on top of there. On time, every single bus is on time because no cars can use the elevated bus lanes. So 500,000 people in that community is benefiting today from it. So 500,000, you can create a documentary about this. You can talk to Liao, who's the minister in charge, and interview SPAD. So the stories can be so many. And to be honest with you, we will run out of space to put the stories about these 23.3 million people whose lives were touched by this work. There's a great opportunity for you to respond to the minister's plea that we use your skills and your capability to tell the story of our country and how he's touched the lives of 23 million people. Go to those villages. Go to Ulu La Chao. And then you will see. In fact, those places, it's quite incredible. In fact, when we were at Ulu La Chao, to La Chao, the Prime Minister was there. The Tua Kampung. He said to him, you know, Dato Sri, your father came to this longhouse to talk about bringing development to my village. He sat there, but unfortunately your father died. He didn't have the longevity of life to finish what he promised. We are so grateful to you that you have brought and fulfilled your father's wishes, because he declared open rural electrification in that longhouse. You know, our Prime Minister stood there in the longhouse. I was there. For the first time, when PM spoke, I think at that moment, he was so touched by what was happening there. I think he forgot that he was the Prime Minister. He spoke from the heart, and he was just the little boy of the father who wanted to finish this project and didn't have the opportunity to finish, and he was finishing. That was a very touching moment. You know what I did after we finished that event? I took my phone and called my wife. He said, darling, you know, if everything that we do in Pemandu and the government does not work, the very thing that happened in this kampong today, I am very happy already. Everything else, tak payah, because I've seen how these people appreciated the little things that we're doing in the village. By the way, my village, 10 years ago, was gutted by fire. The whole longhouse burned because someone forgot to extinguish the candle. We don't have electricity. When the candle fell, and the whole village was gutted, and all of us were homeless. I remember my mother throwing all our pillows outside to keep them there, but most of the things cannot be salvaged. But you know, there are so many stories, real stories about how people have progressed as a result of our work. We are not perfect, but please don't make the perfect become the enemy of the good. Please don't make the perfect become the enemy of the good. There are many good things in this country. I only came to government only for one thing alone. I wanted to make a difference. I'm not a politician. I only want to see that some of the things that we're doing is benefiting the rakyat and is touching the people. I can tell you there are so many people whom we're targeting that are appreciative of this. But sometimes the voice of the angry Malaysians is so loud and damning. It's as if our country is the worst country in the world. You know, I detest that, because I really believe we live in a country that provides so many good things. By the way, Pemandu, we do work for Tanzania government, paid by the British government, US government, the World Bank, and the Swedish government, because they like the methodology. As Dato Sri said, they said, I want Pemandu to assist. So I have 24 people there in Dar es Salaam doing this kind of work. You know, when we look at those countries, we're also helping South Africa. We do some work in Maharashtra state in India. You know how big, in one state alone, 110 million people. One state alone. And our work there is to help how to bring in water for rural people, because they don't have water. So many people in that state don't have access to water. So when I look from outside and look at our country is so blessed. We've never been to war as a country. Very peaceful country. We have natural resources. We're blessed with good people. And so I think let's not throw it away. But I think you play a very, very big part in communication. As the minister has said, it's important for us to communicate the positive things happening in our country. Because if we don't, who else is going to care about Malaysia? Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, we now open the floor for a Q&A session.